Make America Great Again. There is perhaps no slogan more potent and divisive today. These words have become the cornerstone of a grandiose mythology.
We believe that children should be taught to love our country, honor our history, and always respect our great American flag. We will make America great again. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
Usually when we speak of mythology today, it means this, and sometimes this. Epic gods and heroes overcoming their enemies as the mighty Zeus overthrew the Titans, restoring order from a primeval chaos. Yet there are modern mythologies as well, where, similarly, our heroes destroy our enemies. Contrary to the common use of the term, labeling something mythical, at least in the way I'm using it, is not to say it's false, at least not necessarily. Myths are purposive. They are not meant to deceive per se, but to explain experience. Myth is meant to answer questions and offer solutions and to quell the anxieties of the present through stories. They serve a useful purpose, particularly in politics. They create unities and identities among groups. There's still a bit of a story going around that we modern people do not believe in mythologies any longer. You know, we had the whole Enlightenment and Galileo and Darwin, and now we believe in true things and testable hypotheses, right?
You through the 90-second window of time is called the clear button, and here's how it works. Hold your palm in front of your face, and with the index finger, press the button in the middle.
There is a force behind you fighting your battles, opening doors you couldn't open, bringing the right people.
And you keep pressing it.
Right about there, smack in the middle.
Right smack in the middle.
Right.
And you keep pressing it. You can close your eyes if you want.
I also started to listen to guided visualizations to program my subconscious mind for success. And I got really into doing visualizations, vividly picturing what I wanted to achieve, seeing it happen, and then feeling it happen like it was happening right then and there.
There is something happening in nature between 3:30 to 3:40. It's a very significant part of the time.
On the in-breath, count 2. And on the out-breath, think blue.
Your room is an externalization of your mind. And that's right. That's exactly true. To the degree that you're in your room, the room is you.
Myths are very powerful in structuring belief, even those that are not falsifiable. Myths are built out of language and images, which can be studied as signs. Signs are themselves objects that have meanings attached to them. For example, street signs are themselves objects, but their purpose is to control drivers' behavior. The sign doesn't reference anything in experience, and neither is it true or false. But if you adopt them, they become a part of a shared world, such as a traffic system. Now, the study of signs is called semiology, and this video employs a semiotic approach to MAGA as a mythological narrative.
I believe it was God.
Trump is the warrior king.
Yes. and what's going to happen is he's going to come head to head in the paradigm. Jehu comes head to head with Jezebel, the former first lady. Okay. So here now, so there that happened. You have Hillary Clinton, you have Donald Trump. Now everybody said, you know, she's going to trounce Donald Trump. All the polls. The paradigm said that no, the warrior will defeat the former first lady.
There's no doubt that Trump is the transformative political figure of our time. He is a true American leader.
Yeah, so there's the rather extremist take on this, where Trump is the chosen one and a reincarnation of a Bronze Age king who's anointed by God to overthrow the worshippers of Baal. He restores order, like Perseus, who fulfilled a divine prophecy by slaying Medusa, that nasty woman, and restored the kingdom to order. By the way, I spent a while photoshopping this, and it was much more intimate than I ever want to be with either of their faces, but I do this for you. No matter your political position, myths can be particularly dangerous insofar as you value clear reasoning. They misconstrue associations, destroy nuance, and advance subconscious theses without a required burden of evidence. They are not arguments, and instead short-circuit the entire argumentative process. As it were, they provide a shortcut into your soul, bypassing your rational mind in the process. The power of myth as agents of mind control is not at all a new idea. Thousands of years ago, in a foundational book of Western philosophy, Socrates banned poets from the Republic of Reason, or at least puts them on probation, because myths are that dangerous. According to him, poetry, which is more or less myth in this context, feeds and waters the passions instead of drying them up. It lets them rule, although they ought to be controlled if mankind are ever to increase in happiness and virtue. Myths and stories inspire passions even though they are fictional. Anger, jealousy, anxiety, and grief cause people to act irrationally. Reason, on the other hand, is cool, patient, and therefore leads to better long-term decisions. Make America Great Again, and all it entails, is not at all an aberration among campaign slogans. All political campaigns today are indistinguishable from advertising, which also depends upon myth-making. As with hope, slogans create associations that are undeliverable and deform reality in order to get deep into your pathos. There, they prey upon your deepest desires and fears so that you associate their products, or candidates in this case, with what you believe is your identity. Like, how could you be against hope? Just as how could you be against making your country great again? And then, why is this hat so reviled? What's bizarre is that anyone you ask will tell you that they know advertising is basically a well-constructed lie. Yet, advertising works.
Burn, mother. Find out Nike hires Colin Kaepernick for their Just Do It campaign. So I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna burn all my Nikes.
When people willingly act as though they believe what they know deep down is a lie, that's when you know something is ideologically amiss. All that matters is whether or not they resonate and make you feel something.
And I'll never wear another goddamn pair as long as I live. Go yourselves.
Like Socrates said, they get past your mind, and their success condition is whether or not you feel something in your gut. I'm sure you can tell where I'm going with this.
Build that wall, 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 build that wall. Build that wall.
There are various ways to interpret myths. As I said, I'm going to use a method called Semiology, which studies the associations of signs. Signs can be words or images, either visual or mental, and in myth, signs can basically be given any meaning you want, and they can stick. So here's the idea. In ordinary speech, words defer to things and concepts. Together, these form a sign with a relatively stable meaning. In myth, however, the sign is never just what it is. It's part of a greater and much less stable shared world of meaning. For example, a mythical snake is never just a snake. It represents some abstraction or concept. Snakes may be the embodiment of chaos, trickery, or evil. For semioticians, these figures have relatively free-floating meanings, which makes them useful for myth makers. Real snakes are obviously not any more deceitful or evil than any other animal, yet it still makes sense to us modern people to call someone a snake if they have acted deceitfully, which is inherited from ancient myths. Because mythic signs can have such broad possibilities of meanings, they are sometimes called free-floating signifiers, because they are not really attached to a specific meaning and can take on associations somewhat arbitrarily. But back to the point at hand. Myths do not make logical claims. Calling someone a snake is not a syllogism, it's a signification. The MAGA myth is rooted in the slogan, "Make America Great Again."
It's amazing. You know, we ran on a theme, Make America Great Again. And a lot of people are saying that may have been the greatest theme ever in politics. I think it is. We've sold millions and millions of hats.
This is the foundation of the mythos, and we can deconstruct the slogan, word by word, and show what each is really signifying. Of course, depending on the context, America, great, and again have various meanings. But in this myth, nothing is actually itself. So in this myth, each has a particular meaning, and Trump can tell us what they are. Let's start from the end, which is a little simpler. Again means America was once great and is no longer. So when was this? The Revolution, post-Civil War, 1950s? Although it's not immediately clear, you can understand the meaning of again by deconstructing the mental pictures painted in rhetoric. This is Trump's inaugural speech.
Because today, we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another, or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people. Politicians prospered, but the jobs left and the factories closed.
So here's the first sign of this mythology, the factory. As with the snake, the factory is not just a factory. To flesh out the meaning of this sign, Trump mentions factories again soon after.
Rusted out factories scattered like tombstones across the landscape of our nation.
I love it when they wax poetic. His speechwriters here invoke an image of a post-apocalyptic desolation. Thanks, Obama. Factories here signify the ruins of a once great civilization, not unlike ancient temples. Factories has a double function here. First, it's just a word for this. But as a sign in the myth, it has a much greater meaning. The mythical factory does not refer to any specific factory, but is a sign for the loss of manufacturing, the betrayal of politicians, and the outsourcing of production to other countries. Whether or not this is true makes no actual difference to the signification of the factories as the tombstones of American greatness. Take a look at this graph. It shows manufacturing output in red and jobs in manufacturing in blue. With this as a measure, we can see that the again Trump refers to must mean sometime around the mid to late 70s when there were more jobs in manufacturing. It cannot mean production itself, as this is consistently on the up. Here's the power of the myth. It deforms facts such that they serve an emotional narrative of loss and ruin. The rusted out tombstone factories do not signify, as we might expect, factory production, since production appears to be steadily increasing. Outside of the myth, the disappearance of factory jobs is explained pretty simply by the increased automation of factories, which can now produce more with fewer workers. But to the disciples of the MAGA myth, Trump's version resonates better and makes them feel something about their position and identity in this story. The audience understands the sign Trump has created here, and it corroborates their life experience. 30 and 40 years ago, we did manufacturing, and now we don't. It's a narrative to which they can believe they belong, disregarding any actual data. So we have our first sign. The factory equals the loss of manufacturing jobs. But it doesn't end here. Automation replacing jobs is not something that inspires passion.
You don't come and talk about America when you're reporting Muslims.
And it's not that good of a story. So instead, Trump provides a different reason, that some people or groups of people stole your jobs.
We must protect our borders from the ravages of other countries, making our products, stealing our companies, and destroying our jobs.
So now there are other associations attached to this sign. There are identifiable agents to blame for the misfortunes of America. Politicians who made trade deals, China, Mexico. There was a shift in the mid to late 70s, and that's when America stopped winning. And they are to blame. They have exploited and alienated you. Then, with the election of the mythmaker,
the forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer. Everyone is listening to you now. You came by the tens of millions to become part of a historic movement, the likes of which the world has never seen before.
All right, second, and we'll do this one really quick because it's always the same thing for Trump. What does great signify? Well, the whole basis of the slogan is great means winning. And not just winning, but beating. Winning is a zero-sum game.
For many decades, we've enriched foreign industry at the expense of American industry, subsidized the armies of other countries while allowing for the very sad depletion of our military.
You get the idea, so I'll just speed this along.
We've defended other nations' borders while refusing to defend our own, and spent trillions and trillions of dollars overseas while America's infrastructure has fallen into disrepair and decay.
Greatness for Trump's America is solely nationalistic. Trump wants not only success, but more success than other people, and not giving up anything for free.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. No charity or anything like that. Not making the world better, just making America better. Every one of these propositions implies an us and a them. This brings us to our most important and divisive sign. So what is America in this myth? The sign America is not a geographic entity. It's a demographic entity, and it's made up of those who believe the myth explains their experience. This is Trump's version of America.
Because this moment is your moment, it belongs to you.
We know this because he addresses them directly in his inaugural speech. So here's a map of counties that switched votes from Democrat to Trump between 2012 and 2016. Now, there are of course other factors involved here, but you can get a general picture of who self-identified as the forgotten ones, of those who are most likely to identify themselves with the characters created in the MAGA myth. As much as they rail against it, this is identity politics.
I feel he's the last chance we have to establish law and order and preserve the culture I grew up in.
You are America. But true America is not politicians in Washington, as he's made clear. It is the forgotten to whom he is speaking. This indicates, of course, that not everyone in America is an American according to the MAGA myth. Here are a few other stipulations that could be added to sort out the meaning of this sign.
This is your day, this is your celebration, and this, the United States of America, is your country. This is a country where we speak English.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
By the way, I hate some of these people, but I'd never kill them. I hate them.
Now, to put all of this together, American, in its true sense, signifies a forgotten, nationalistic, Trump-supporting, manufacturing, job-loving, English-speaking, flag-fetishizing, globalist-opposing, non-elite, non-Muslim, non-illegal person who believes that America has been in the decline since the mid to late 70s. So yeah, that's about right. Note that this mythology is perhaps not overtly racist, but I don't imagine that the majority of women or racial and sexual minorities would prefer to live in 1970s America than today, because of the legal and institutional prejudices that have since begun to be addressed and are still being addressed. But couple that with the dog whistling about this being a country where we speak English, and it's not a stretch to suggest that the America he is invoking excludes groups of people who are American. This is why the MAGA hats are perceived as a symbol of at least intolerance and at worst hatred. There are also many who want to take this away from them. In addition to overseas freeloaders and losers, there are also internal antagonists. Circumstances are bad for true Americans, and the MAGA myth reduces all these complex factors: global trade, automation, disaffection, inequality, insecurity, and racial tensions to a single cause: them. And then gives an elegant, comprehensive solution to all of them: me. This brings us to our final sign: Trump himself, whose powers and abilities are implied in the making of America great again. Now, it would take hours and hours to break down the way Trump positions himself in this myth because he rarely stops talking about himself, ever. But there's a lot in his image that correlates to mythic heroes. He follows an order from chaos trope common to mythology, where a hero or god enters a state of primeval chaos, confronts it, and stabilizes the cosmos. Zeus did it, Perseus did it, and Christ did it.
All right, and Trump is the warrior king.
Yes.
He didn't need this job. He had a great life. You guys in it? He gave that all up for me to try to make my life better.
Not exaggerating. Trump is this emergent hero, a winner and a savior. Yet instead of fighting ancient sea dragons, titans, or gorgons, he's slaying the political status quo, Hillary and Obama. He's beating back China, taming North Korea, and bringing spurious losers like NATO back in line. He's purging the land and liberating the oppressed. And at long last, he's calling upon his chosen people, the people of the heartland, to emerge from obscurity.
Send them bastards back. I'm sure that paperwork comes in Spanish. Ignorance and immigrants, they mix together. Woo!
He is a winner, and his status symbols prove it. Monuments bear his name like the kings of old. Not to mention, he claims he was once where they are now. By his testimony, he's a self-made success story thanks to his deal-making prowess. He played the game and won, and even if he cheated a little bit, his followers will forgive him, as that's just what you have to do to succeed when you get to such a high level. He may not be a perfect instrument, but he is the divine instrument.
But I present it because it's an interesting story. He said Donald Trump would turn America toward Christ. And when I interviewed the priest, he told me that he thinks that Donald Trump has already done that. He said when he beat Hillary Clinton, he turned America toward Christ, and then, of course, since then, he's done a lot of other things.
The best part is he asks nothing from his people that they don't already want to give him. They are cast as helpless, powerless, disaffected, and so all they need to do is to support and elevate him. And maybe send a few bombs to journalists once in a while. All right, so there's the structure of the myth. What's interesting to me is that there's nothing really novel here. Everything is ultimately reduced to binaries of good and evil, which is replete with archetypes, the basic narrative structure, and most importantly, it's explanatory. The problems are made clear, and then the solutions are even clearer. Anti-Trump media likes to point out that these signs are not real. They will say things like, this guy is a failed businessman, he's a cheat and a grifter, and he's morally repugnant. Yet none of these are effective critiques of a mythology, because such claims to his disciples simply demonstrate that you are one of the them. You are jealous that they won. Here's the final point on the communicative power of myth. It's a self-contained world of signs, and everything already has a marked position, so it becomes very hard to signify otherwise with a believer. Then the myth appears impenetrable. Any contrary narrative is thus spun by false prophets, the forked tongue, enemies conspiring against the chosen one. So as far as I see it, historically speaking, there are only two things that can take down a myth. Enlightenment, which, let's face it, is never going to happen again. Or, on the other hand, better myths with more resonant explanations and solutions. In part, this may explain the advent of a renewed interest in socialism, which identifies some similar enemies with radically different proposals for how to solve them. So if you're interested in this hermeneutic method, it was inspired by Roland Barthes' books S, Z, and Mythologies. If you're interested in other methods of interpreting contemporary media cultures, I recommend that you check out the other videos on this channel and that you stay tuned for more to come. They won't be all this lengthy.
Believe me. Hey, you got to be a little bit more paranoid than you are, okay?